Welcome back, fellow Fanatics. I'm Adam the Fanatic, also known as Mario Fanatic 15, and welcome to another installment of Nerdy Fanaticism. Today I'm kicking off Sega Month by talking about GameTap. Now, the five of you that actually remember GameTap may be thinking to yourselves, wait a minute, GameTap wasn't run by Sega. And you would be correct. However, Sega was a major part of the service's inception. You see, GameTap's history doesn't start with GameTap itself. Instead, we're first going to look over a decade earlier. In December of 1994, Time Warner Cable launched a similar project known as the Sega Channel. The Sega Channel was a subscription-based service that came with a special cartridge for the Sega Genesis that would connect to your cable box. With this, you could stream from a selection of different games and play them in full. Of course, it was limited to the Sega Genesis titles, but it featured a host of different games, including some such as Mega Man: The Wily Wars and Alien Soldier, which never saw a physical release in the United States. In addition to the games themselves, it also had contests, demos, and listed hints and cheat codes for various games. Of course, as the Sega Genesis life cycle came to a close and its popularity waned, the service ceased to be viable, and the partnership dissolved in 1998. Though not before Time Warner Cable and Turner Broadcasting Systems merged in 1996. Now you may be asking what the relevance of that merger is to GameTap. Well, fast forward to October of 2005. The same Turner Broadcasting System launched a very similar initiative. And while they certainly weren't alone this time, Sega was one of their initial partners. Unlike the Sega Channel, GameTap was not merely limited to Genesis games. Its focus was PC games, but it also had a storied library of games from various Sega consoles, including not only the aforementioned Genesis, but also the Master System, Game Gear, Saturn, Dreamcast, 32X, yes, I know, technically an extension of the Genesis rather than a separate console, and also quite the offering of various arcade titles. And much of the Sega Channel spirit could be seen within the way GameTap was run. It was more than just a game streaming service. You had weekly contests where players could win various prizes. They offered their own streaming service with various shows, before Netflix began the streaming portion of their service even. They worked to include online multiplayer in the emulated arcade and Genesis titles, something that official emulators to this day rarely manage. They would have days where the staff would feature a game and hop on to play with customers. They did news articles on gaming, and not just games on their service. They actually declared Super Mario Galaxy, a Wii exclusive, as their choice for Game of the Year 2007. They held quizzes which would give away prizes to random correct entrants. Well, it wasn't entirely random at first. The first three quizzes they held, they still had 3 winners. However, the first entrant to submit the correct answers was guaranteed to win, and the other 2 would be selected at random. However, the same user won all 3 weeks, so they tweaked the rules a bit and made it so that all 3 were chosen at random. They called this change the Fanatic Clause, which I actually considered using as the name of my channel when considering how to brand it. The staff actually reached out to me a few weeks later and asked if I'd be willing to write the questions for an upcoming trivia contest, to which I eagerly accepted, and I made the quiz themed around Sega Genesis games. And it wasn't just old classics that GameTap offered. There were games that were created specifically for them. While it wasn't their first game, few would argue that reviving the Sam & Max series is what put Telltale Games on the map. And this was actually a joint venture between them and GameTap, and originally exclusive to the service. GameTap also managed to have a number of same-day acquisitions, with the likes of Tomb Raider Legend being launched on the platform the same day it was released in stores. But as you're likely already aware, GameTap is nowhere to be seen. What went wrong? I can only speculate and guess, but if I were to give my own opinion, I would list 2 reasons. Firstly, people just weren't ready for streaming video games. Netflix itself wouldn't launch its streaming service for another 2 years, and Steam had only taken off a couple of years prior, and it certainly wasn't the industry-dominating behemoth that it is today. Even today, models comparable to GameTap are only recently becoming a thing again, with the likes of Origin Access and Uplay Plus both being relatively new. The other problem was when Turner sold the service to Metaboli. Metaboli just didn't share the same vision for the company that its founders had. They quickly gutted the service, reducing it to its base features, games only, which wouldn't have been the end of the world, but that selection of games quickly diminished as partnerships began to crumble, including Sega, which meant that the vast library of titles from all their consoles left with them. And on top of that, they also began selling games in Steam-like fashion, which often went much slower than competing sites, with payment taking several hours to process. Yikes. Glad I jumped ship before that. Nevertheless, GameTap was a boon to me. With it, I was able to try many games that I likely otherwise wouldn't have given a second glance. It was the first way I experienced Deus Ex. It was also my first chance to play Civilization 4 and its expansions. Still my favorite turn-based strategy title to this very day. There was an amazing variety of titles which spanned years of gaming history. While the tap may have dried up, it was certainly a fun ride while it lasted. I hope you enjoyed my little delve into this oft-forgotten part of gaming history. Did you play on GameTap? Or maybe you have experience with another digital game rental service. If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, be sure to leave them in the comments down below, and please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to join me next week when I'll be taking a look at the Sonic the Hedgehog trilogy on Sega Genesis, 3 of the many games that were once playable on GameTap. Until then, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.